In a quiet hospital room, as the first light of dawn touched the walls, a story of friendship and incredible selflessness was about to begin. Mr. James was an elderly man who spent his afternoons sitting up by the room's only window, his kind face always reflecting a hidden peace. Beside him lay Mr. John, a man confined to his back, who lived for those precious hours when James would describe the world outside. With eyes that seemed to sparkle with life, James would gaze out of the window and transport his friend to a place of wonder. Every word was carefully chosen, spoken with a gentle smile that painted vivid pictures in the silence of their shared hospital room. He spoke of a park where flowers bloomed in every shade of the rainbow, dancing softly under the gaze of an ancient, golden sun. He described a sparkling blue lake where children laughed while sailing their small wooden boats, their spirits as free as the summer wind. John would listen with his eyes tightly closed, seeing every detail in his mind, feeling the warmth of the sun and the joy of life. James told stories of young lovers walking hand in hand among the roses, their whispers lost in the beauty of the afternoon air. He would point toward the sky, describing the graceful flight of birds as they soared over the park, creating a sense of total freedom. He spoke of a majestic swan gliding across the water, its reflection perfect and still on the surface of the imaginary deep blue lake. John's heart would swell with hope as he asked about the children, his own pain forgotten in the beauty of his friend's vivid descriptions. James would describe a boy in a red sweater, full of life and energy, chasing a butterfly through the tall green grass of summer. He made the world outside sound so real that the gray hospital walls seemed to vanish, replaced by the vibrant colors of a happy life. As the real sun set behind the hospital, the room would fill with the golden glow of a friendship built on words and imagination. He even described grand parades with bright costumes and invisible music that made the boy's heart beat with a rhythm of pure excitement. In John's mind, the musicians marched with pride, their colorful uniforms a stark contrast to the sterile white environment of their medical reality. He could almost hear the drums, his fingers tapping the sheets in time with a parade that existed only in the heart of his friend. Days turned into weeks, and through the changing light, the stories continued, providing a lifeline of joy for a man who could not move. When winter came, James described the magic of falling snow, turning the park into a silent, white wonderland of peace and quiet beauty. He told of children building snowmen with carrot noses, their laughter echoing through the cold air like bells ringing in a distant, happy town. The calendar pages turned, but the beauty of the window remained constant, a window into a world that felt more real than their illness. Yet, a small seed of jealousy began to grow in John's heart. He wondered why James was the only one allowed to see the beauty. He struggled with his feelings, feeling guilty for his envy while remaining deeply grateful for the hope that James gave him every single day. James, unaware of the struggle, began describing the arrival of spring, with cherry blossoms falling like soft, pink snow over the winding paths. The imagery was so beautiful that John felt he could smell the fragrance of the flowers through the scent of medicine and hospital air. Even the nurses noticed the change in the room, moved by the quiet strength of two men who found beauty in a single, small window. On a day of high winds, James described a kite-flying festival, with dragons and birds of every color dancing wildly against the deep blue. The sky was full of life, he said, a testament to the human spirit's ability to soar even when the body is tied to the earth. John felt the wind on his face as he imagined the kites, his spirit flying high above the hospital, far beyond his physical limitations. At night, James spoke of the moon's reflection on the lake, a silver path leading to a place where there was no more pain or suffering. They sat in the silence of the night, two souls connected by a window that provided more healing than any medicine ever could. But James was growing weaker, his voice a soft whisper as he described the twinkling lights of the city coming to life at dusk. He spoke of the park under the glow of street lamps, a place of safety and quiet reflection for those who needed a moment of peace. John drifted to sleep, his dreams filled with the gentle scenes his friend had painted, unaware that this would be their final shared journey. In the deep silence of the night, James looked out the window for the last time, his face resting in a state of ultimate, quiet grace. The machines slowed, his heart finding its own peaceful rhythm as he prepared to leave the room he had filled with so much light. Morning arrived with a heavy stillness. The sun shone on the empty chair, but the voice that gave it meaning was finally and forever silent. When the nurse entered, the sudden change in the atmosphere told her everything she needed to know before she even reached the bed by the window. She bowed her head in respect for a man who had used his final breaths to create happiness for someone else in need. John woke to a world that felt suddenly gray and hollow, the loss of his friend hitting him harder than any physical ailment ever had. He watched through blurred eyes as they moved the bed, the reality of death crashing into the world of beauty James had so carefully built. The day was a long, cold shadow of silence. Without the descriptions, the room felt like a cage rather than a place of shared wonder. He missed the parades, the swans, and the children. Most of all, he missed the voice that made him believe that life was still beautiful. Finally, driven by a desperate need to see the park for himself, John asked the nurse if he could be moved to the window. She agreed with a sad smile, helping him make the transition to the place where James had spent so many hours looking at the world. Now, lying in the bed by the window, John waited. He was afraid that his own eyes wouldn't see the magic his friend saw. He remembered every detail, every color, and every child. He was ready to finally witness the park that had kept him alive for weeks. With a great, painful effort, he propped himself up on one elbow, his heart racing with a mixture of excitement and deep, heavy dread. Slowly, he turned his head, his gaze reaching out for the lake, the trees, and the lovers walking hand in hand through the rose garden. But as his eyes met the glass, he saw nothing but a cold, gray, blank brick wall standing just a few inches away. He stared in disbelief. There was no park, no lake, no children, only a solid wall of stone that blocked any view of the world. When the nurse returned, he asked her with a broken voice why James had described such beauty when there was only a wall. She looked at the wall, a tear falling as she realized the depth of the sacrifice James had made for a man he barely knew. Mr. James was completely blind, she whispered. He couldn't see the wall, let alone the park he described to you every single day. The truth hit John like a physical wave. James hadn't been describing what he saw, but what he knew John desperately needed to hear. He had spent his final days inventing a world of joy to give his friend a reason to keep fighting, a reason to feel hope. John looked at the brick wall again, but it was no longer ugly. It was a monument to a love that asks for nothing in return. He closed his eyes and began to see the park again, determined to keep the window of hope open for as long as he lived. Every small act of kindness creates a world of beauty. Thank you for listening to this story on Inspiring Tales. Subscribe for more.